Welcome to our February edition of Zoom Seekers. We are a day late because of Valentine's Day, so hopefully you all had a good Valentine's Day. And tonight we've got someone who's been my friend for I don't know how many years, 30, 40 years easily. Dale Sheckler is the former editor of the California Diving News and former owner of the Scuba Show, and still is I guess, a contributing editor to California Diving News. You still see him around. Has written a book, Best Beach Dives of California, and does all kinds of other things, and is actually a deacon, because I went to his ordination in the Catholic Church. And he just sent me a picture of us from 9 years ago. And all I can say is, Dale, I think you may have aged a little better than I had. I had a little more hair and it was a little darker. But at any rate, but Dale's here tonight to talk about not just beach dives, but you can probably sucker him into mentioning a beach dive or two at the end, but sort of the best dives, many of which probably will be offshore in California. And so not everybody is a California diver, like Carol is in Louisiana, but Carol, someday you'll come out here and we'll get you to go in cold water. Who knows? So without further ado, since I can do a lot of ado, please give a warm Zoom Seekers welcome to our speaker, Dale Sheckler. And then if everybody will go ahead and mute their mics, except for Dale. And Dale, I'd say you have the floor. You have the screen.
I have the screen. Okay. Well, I'm here mainly to talk about diving the Channel Islands. If we got all night, I can talk about beach diving. I can talk about diving the Channel Islands. I can talk about just about anything in California. But I'm here mainly to talk about diving the Channel Islands tonight. But at a later time, we can go ahead and talk about, maybe another session about doing beach diving, if that's what you're into. I've known Ken, like he said, 30, 40 years. I'll be 40 years. I think he was there when I got on one of the boats, when I got a pie in the face from either Buck or himself. I don't remember which. You remember?
I don't think I've ever thrown a pie at you.
You were there.
I probably was there.
It was coming back on one of the express boats after one of the underwater cleanups. And we'd had a few, and I got a pie in the face. Anyway, I thought you were one of the instigators. No?
I usually maintain plausible deniability.
Yeah. Anyway, so let me go ahead and get started. It's all on PowerPoint. I've been diving California, as a matter of fact, this year, 50 years. 50 years. It was 1973 that I first got certified. I guess I've been diving longer because I was a free diver before that as a teenager, but I've been diving 50 years. It's gone by so quick. And I'm still actively diving California. And so it's something that I love and have always loved. And it's only recently that I've gone back to my dry suit because I just get so cold anymore. I say back to my dry suit. I was a hardcore wetsuit diver, but the trouble and hassle I got a little bit out of the dry suit. So I started doing wetsuit, then I got too cold and I started back with the dry suit. So what happens when you get into your 60s, I guess. So let me go ahead and get started with my PowerPoint here.
You need me to walk you through it? There we go.
There we go.
Bingo. All good.
Okay. So I'm here to talk about diving California Channel Islands. My new book, by the way, I came out with a brand new book just this last year called The Diving and Snorkeling Guide to the California Channel Islands. It's got 98 different dive sites, all but three, because all but three have GPS coordinates. The three that don't have GPS coordinates are the Wreck of the Valiant, which, as most people know, is right off Descanso Beach. The underwater park, which you don't need any GPS coordinates for that, or if you do, you're falling a little short.
You're not smart enough to be certified.
You're 2 eggs short of a dozen. So yeah. And then Lover's Cove, which is on the other side from the underwater park. So that's the only 3 that don't have a GPS. Anyways, that's the new book, is the Diving and Snorkeling Guide to the California Channel Islands. This is by Dale and Kim, although Kim's in the other room right now watching the dogs. So, okay, we've got a total of 8 channel islands. A lot of people, non-divers, are only familiar with Catalina, or maybe they see the shadow off in the distance as they go to Santa Barbara. There's a total of 8 channel islands. A little bit of geography lessons: San Diego, Los Angeles, Ventura, Santa Barbara. The channel islands can be broken down into the northern chain and the southern group. The southern group is San Clemente Island, San Nicolas Island, Catalina, and Santa Barbara Island. Northern chain is Anacapa Island, Santa Cruz Island, Santa Rosa Island, San Miguel Island. The 4 of the northern chain and Santa Barbara Island make up the Channel Islands National Park. So that's the total of those. So 5 of the 8 islands are Channel Islands National Park. Of 2 of the other islands, San Nicolas Island and San Clemente Island, those are owned and controlled by the military. So they're kind of a reserve in their own nature, and the fact that nobody can land on the island. And Catalina is the only one that's privately owned, although 2/3 of the northern of the Santa Cruz Island, and I'll cover this in a minute, is controlled by the Island Conservancy, the Nature Conservancy, I'm sorry. Want to mention a little bit of the geography. Point Conception being to the north, and Point Arguello. Prevailing weather comes in from the northwest. And you've got a southern swell that comes in from storms from the south on occasion. Anyways, this turn where the coastline takes a turn from Point Conception, the majority of the coastline runs in a north-south direction, and then it makes a radical turn to the east-west. And where the California Channel Islands reside is in what's known as the California Bight, or the Southern California Bight. And what that does is it offers quite a bit of protection from the prevailing weather. The currents and the prevailing weather that take place in Southern California is known as the Catalina Eddy, where this didn't really happen this last week, but the currents will circle around Catalina. Most of the currents run from the north to the south, but in Southern California, in the California Bight, it circles back around and gets caught into this eddy. So you get this slightly more warmed water whirling up towards Catalina and sweeping over towards catching a little bit of Anacapa and then San Nicolas and San Clemente Island. That's why Catalina, San Clemente, and San Nicolas Island, the ones to the south, are not necessarily warmer because they are in the south, but they are warmer because they're caught up in this Catalina eddy. Those of you that have dove San Diego know that the water can be pretty darn cold down there for some reason. It's actually not as cold at Catalina, usually, where it is from San Diego. Real quick word about the MPAs. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on MPAs. As you can tell from this map, it's like a patchwork. I'm going to talk about a lot of different dive sites. and I, for life of me, cannot remember which ones are in the MPA and which ones aren't. I can usually remember, but not always. So I'll do the best I can. But refer to the California Fish and Wildlife website for exactly where the MPAs are. Again, it's your responsibility to know where the MPA are if you're an underwater hunter, and what you can and can't do in each one of those MPAs and where they border and all that.
And Dale, if I can interject just a second, in
Yes.
July, I know it's jumping ahead, but July, Stephen Wirtz from Fish and Wildlife will be our guest speaker, and he'll be talking about those MPAs because we just completed what we call the decadal review. It's a 10-year review because they've been in and out for 10 years of what's what and everything else. So
Great.
keep a note on that for July. Okay, back to you.
Yeah. Okay, San Clemente, I'm going to kind of work my way from the south to the north, and the southernmost of the Channel Islands is San Clemente Island. Southernmost of the islands. It's known for its warmer, I won't say warm. I mean, it's no secret that California waters can be chilly. But of all the California waters, I would say the ones off San Clemente Island to be the warmest. It's controlled by the U.S. Navy. I'm going to focus mainly on Pyramid Cove, Fish Hook, some of the other dive sites down there. Most of the backside is too windswept and too weathery to usually dive, although some by dive boats will be able to make it back there. I'm also going to refer mostly to dive charter boats, especially the outer islands. It's usually the dive charter boats that get to the outer islands. Not too many private boats, but I'm going to spend a lot of time on Catalina. If anybody out there owns a boat, frequently probably run over to Catalina. Pyramid Cove is one of my favorite dive sites. I would say, people say, well, which one's your favorite island? And I would usually say San Clemente, but Catalina close second. Probably because I've dove Catalina the most and I know it the best. But every time I go out to San Clemente Island, I really enjoy it. So on the front side, now the front side's got a steep drop off. Almost all the dive sites on the front side are a steep drop off, except for at Fish Hook, which is named for a point that comes out and hooks around. It's a rocky point that offers a little bit more weather protection. And Window Pane is known for its clear water, hence the name. But there's a pinnacle just offshore that rises from the bottom to very shallow. I would say it's 35 or 40 feet, but then drops off very steeply to beyond recreational diving limits. Clear water, wonderful terrain. San Clemente Island has a lot of lobsters, but it's also known as the land of the shorts. Okay, so you're going to have to really, really pick and choose if you want to get a lobster dinner out there. I would not rely on San Clemente Island to get a lobster dinner out there. San Nicolas Island is the furthest of the Channel Islands outward. It is also controlled by the U.S. military. It is 57 miles out, and it's a long haul. It's very weather exposed. There's a military base on there that's very jealously guarded, as is the north end of San Clemente Island. 57 miles out, rigorously guarded, best for hunting, specifically lobster, because not too many of the boats get out there and not too many commercial boats get out there. It's got great lobster hunting. There's an area out there that I really like, but it's a very advanced dive site known as the Boilers or the Freeway. It's the Boilers is where the reef comes up very shallow. It actually boils the water around the surface. And surrounding that is what's known as the Freeway, which is a fairly flat rock bottom. But what happens is at nighttime, forgot to silence my clock. So you'll hear my clock chiming every once in a while. It's a very flat rock rocky surface, but lobsters will go ahead and venture out away from the boiler onto this flat rocky surface. And here and there on the freeway, almost like cars, are these little rock piles. And at night, when the sun comes up, they're kind of trapped out in this open area. So they'll back off into these little rock piles, and you can, the charter boats will hit those little rock piles, and you'll find just tons of lobster. And of course, there's Big Rock far offshore, an underwater a pinnacle that breaks the surface. Really great, sharp drop-offs. And of course, there's Catalina Island. 86% of it is owned and controlled by the Island Conservancy. The Wrigley family owned most of the island, all of the island, as a matter of fact, up until 1972, I think it was, I remember correctly, and at which time they deeded over 86% of the island to the Catalina Conservancy, and they took over the island with the idea that they were going to keep it in its natural state in perpetuity. So that's their mission. So if you go into the backcountry of Catalina Island, you're walking on land controlled by the Conservancy. The remainder of that island is owned by privately in Avalon itself. That is private land. It's the only municipality on all the islands. There's a little teeny town at the isthmus, but it's not an incorporated area, and it's controlled by the Conservancy. Contrary to belief, it's not 26 miles across the sea. It's 18 miles from the mainland at the nearest point, 20 miles long. Main town of being Avalon, about 3,700 permanent residents, but in the summertime it swells. They say it swells to over 500,000 people.
Dale, is that shot from the Chinese weather balloon?
I'm not sure, but could be.
Okay.
Not detailed enough.
Okay.
And I don't see any missile silos.
True.
Oh, you didn't know about the missile silo hidden in the casino?
Well, there you go.
Yeah, 1 million annual tourists. It gets a lot of people. I was actually over there just a few days. In fact, I just got back, taking care of my house that's over there, and from storm damage. And a cruise ship came in, and just thousands of people piled off the cruise ship. So the town went from the day before to a few straggly people wandering around, to thousands of people from the cruise ship. Of course, most everybody's familiar with the Avalon Underwater Park, Casino Point. Not going to spend a lot of time at Casino Point because I imagine a lot of you have dove there. It's got stairs down to the water's edge. I remember back in the day when you didn't have stairs and you had to climb over the rocks to get down into the water. Anyways, it's buoyed and roped off area where no boats can go in. It's a preserve. It's been one of the oldest underwater parks, not just in the United States, in the world. It's arguable whether or not Pennicamp in Florida is, or Casino Point is, or where it's divided up. Go figure. Anyways, it's a great dive. It's what I call to out-of-towners. It's kind of like the sampler plate. If there's one place they can go to dive the Channel Islands, go there and you get a sampler plate of everything you can pretty much expect. Kelp forest, get to see some black sea bass, big sheephead on occasion. You know, it's one other one I want to mention. I want to mention Lover's Cove on the opposite side of the bay from the underwater park. Now, you can't scuba dive there. Lover's Cove there. You can't scuba dive there, but the snorkeling is fantastic. Fish are very, very friendly, come up to you for a handout. I actually, a little funny story. I decided I was going to take some stale bagels out to feed the fish one time. And you got to wear gloves. You got to wear gloves. And they were biting at my hand so bad that I pulled the bagel backwards towards my face. And I got bit on the lip and it drew blood by a very aggressive calico bass, I guess it was. Anyway, Garibaldi's will bring out frozen peas if you want to feed the fish, and they'll come right up to you. Lots of friendly fish. Okay, Catalina. I'm going to jump right over to Long Point and Pirates Cove. Find some more eels there, and a lot of checkout dives are done at Pirates Cove because it's nice and protected and relatively shallow, sand bottom. But head over to Long Point. If you're more of an advanced diver, head over to Long Point. It gets a little more current swept. It drops off into deep water. On the far side of the point, the currents can be a little tough sometimes. So this is one of those sites that if the dive charter boat anchors in Pirates Cove and you're a more experienced diver, head over to Long Point, and you'll enjoy that a lot. But watch out for the currents. Long Point, you can find tree fish up to yin yang. It's crazy. Around the corner a little bit, you got Italian Gardens. Italian Gardens, Goat Harbor, that area is known for its black sea bass. Excuse me, giant sea bass. I want to correct myself on that. I want to correct myself on that because they're only black when they're dead. When people used to catch them and hang them up, they would turn completely black. So they were called giant black sea bass. Now we know that they're pretty much gray or charcoal gray, but they vary in color. I'm doing a research in an article right now. They can actually change color pretty quickly, and I've noticed that before. The one will swim by and you'll notice, oh, that's a different one. No, that's the same one. They've just changed colors. So they'll go from a silver gray to a dark gray to a charcoal with spots. Goat Harbor. I would say probably most of the diving activity at Catalina takes place at the Isthmus Cove. Tiny town of 2 harbors. It's the narrowest point of the island, only a quarter mile wide. There's ferry service there. The same Catalina Express boats that go to Avalon, you can get out of San Pedro that go to the Isthmus Cove. There's a B&B there. There's a campground there. Seafan Grotto, I got a great picture of Ken carrying his camera into, I don't think I have it here. Wait a minute, let me see. That's Kim and
Oh, that's Kim.
That's Kim. I can tell the difference, Ken.
I'm glad.
Makes for great photography. It's kind of an easy cavern you can slip into. Your bubbles will knock down a lot of crap from the ceiling. But if you're careful not to, if your buoyancy is good, you won't beat up the gorgoni. You don't want to do that. And then there's a skylight in the back that brings down sunbeams. It's only 25, 30 feet down. It's a real easy dive. And it's a real easy cavern penetration. It's not really very deep at all.
And it's generous, I think, to call it a cavern, more like a deep overhang.
Yeah, deep overhang, hole, almost a hole in the wall, hole in the island. Yeah, it's generous. A shiprock. Some people call it bird shit rock, but shiprock. I've also heard Bird Island, bird rock called bird shit rock. But anyway, it's the steep pinnacle. It's got an area that's doesn't drop off quite so fast, and it's got this other area that drops off very quickly. We're on the side that drops off quickly, this photograph. Surprisingly, pretty good lobster hunting, believe it or not. It's not an MPA. The main event is the steep drop-offs. I really like Isthmus Reef. Isthmus Reef's got its steep drop-offs too. And there's Bird Rock. A lot of people don't know. A lot of people dive Bird Rock. They'll dive the plateau. They'll go to the drop-off. But if you head to the west along Bird Rock Wall, you run into this underwater arch, which is really cool. 55 feet of water. Lots of blue banded gobies. Isthmus Reef, I really like for the horn sharks. You almost always see horn sharks too. Almost always. Some really big ones. 3-4 feet. I've seen more big ones there than any other place. Towards the west end, you got Little Geiger Cove. It's got a nice little drop off, but a lot of people don't know if you head in shallow, where there's the sand flats, like 15, 20 feet of water. Summertime, these gigantic bat rays, like 5 feet across, will congregate. There's one particular dive that Kim and I made. There must have been 30 or 40 of these huge bat rays. And I've been in there probably a number of different times and have found no less than a dozen. And they're anywhere between 3 to 5 feet across. They're not little guys. Indian Rock, Emerald Bay, nice shallow water area, clear, relaxed, diving, not too much current, clear water, nice marine life, moray eels. Let me back up a little bit there. Moray eels are thought not to be necessarily native, believe it or not, to California waters. They're thought to be more warm water species, and that the larvae will drift up from down south, and the moray eels will make a set up home here. And the reason they know this is because there's no nests, egg nests, or any evidence of mating or anything like that about the moray eel. So they think that the larva drifts up from down south.
Hey, Dale, I've been out of the water for a while. I was just wondering, are the scythe butterfly fish still around?
Yeah, I kind of bypassed that. That's the Crane Point. Kind of bypassed that. Yes, the scythe butterfly fish are still around. At Crane Point, it's one of the few places where you're guaranteed to see scythe butterfly fish. 45 feet right underneath the Rusty Shack. Right there. They're almost always there. And there are a few other places throughout the islands that you can find them. San Clemente Island. See, somebody told me there's some down in San Diego. But I know that's where you can guarantee to see them. Johnson Rocks towards the far west end. Now, once you get past Arrow Point, which is this point right there, I don't know if you can see my cursor. Once you get past Arrow Point, I want to back up a little bit. From the isthmus all the way over to Arrow Point, that's an invertebrate preserve, with the exception of Eagle Reef, which is about right in here. That's all part of an invertebrate preserve. So you can't take anything, you can't take a lobster, for example. But beyond Arrow Point, to the west, it's outside the invertebrate preserve. And so you can take lobster, and it's a good lobster hunting ground. And probably the main reason is the west end is a little more open and exposed to the weather. And not divers and dive boats don't always get over there more frequently, not that frequently. Might want to also mention that the entire front side of Catalina is closed to commercial lobster hunting. So the front side of Catalina, as far as lobster hunting goes, with the exception of the preserves, of course, is pretty good lobster hunting. Nothing really big, nothing to write home about. And you probably couldn't get your limit, but I consistently find lobster hunting pretty good on the front side of Catalina. Johnson Rock's got some good steep drop-offs and some good lobster hunting. A nice little kelp forest. Okay, no mention of San Clemente Island would be worthwhile unless I mention Farnsworth Bank. It's purple coral. It's actually not reef-building coral, it's hydrocoral, which is more akin to stinging coral that you might find in, I think Bonaire's got some, and other parts of the Caribbean has got stinging coral. So it's not a reef-building coral, it's a hydrocoral. Kim and I dropped down into this one particular coral canyon. We went on a charter boat not too knowledgeable charter boat, and they didn't drop us on the main pinnacle. It's actually a series of 7 pinnacles, but the other 7 are kind of smallish and they're much deeper. Anyways, this dive charter boat was supposed to put us on the main pinnacle. Well, he didn't. He put us on a much, much deeper pinnacle, and we dropped down to 100 feet. We're still going. Water was crystal clear, and all we could see underneath us, 30 or 40 feet down, was big purple, just nothing but purple. So we dropped down about 130 feet and found just the biggest stands of purple coral we'd ever thought we'd see. Anyways, this is where that picture was taken. The Santa Barbara Islands, the smallest of the Channel Islands. It's only 1 square mile. It's part of the Channel Islands National Park. Channel Islands National Park used to be just Channel Islands National Monument. Excuse me, I don't remember what year it became a national park, but it was some time ago. And the Channel Islands National Monument used to be just Anacapa and Santa Barbara Island. So that's been under the auspices of the National Park System for quite some time. The Sea Lion Rookery is probably the main event for going to Santa Barbara Island. It's just a lot of fun. Now there's a difference between a rookery and haul outs. A sea lion haul out is just simply where a lot of sea lions will beach themselves to warm themselves and rest and relax. A rookery is where they actually go ashore to give birth and go about their business taking care of their young. So that's a rookery. And the rookery, there's a lot more juveniles, which are a lot more fun to play with around underwater. So that's where you'll find the most fun is in the rookeries. Arch Reef. Isn't there also a reef out here that you call Ken's Reef or something like that, Ken?
Ken's Cave.
Ken's Cave.
It's north of Sea Lion Rookery.
Oh, okay. Because I've never
It's on
been
that
there.
side.
Oh, okay. Okay. Never been there.
It's great.
You've never taken me there.
Well, that's true. Maybe if you play your cards right, you'll get to go this summer.
Okay. Okay. Archery's really cool. It's about most of the diving out off the northwest corner of Santa Barbara Island is fairly deep, rough terrain. It's a little more open and exposed. Arch Reef is one of those few that comes up fairly shallow. It comes up, peaks out at about 20 feet below the surface. And a moderate swell, the water will actually boil. But most of the diving, the bottom of the arch is about 60, 65. Top of the arch is about 35, 40. So it's a pretty big arch. Webster Point, I really like there. This I throw up this picture of an angel shark because it shows the value of a good charter boat captain. I once went to the charter boat captain and he says, we were at Santa Barbara Island. I said, I've never gotten a decent picture of an angel shark. He pulls up to Angel Shark Cove and he points at the water and he says, there. Sure enough, I dropped down right underneath the boat was an angel shark. So that was a lot of fun. Webster Point, I'm sorry, I'm going to mention Angel Shark Cove is about right in here. Webster Point, good spot, and the Webster Point boilers right in there. It's a really good spot for lobster hunting. Anacapa Island is the second smallest of the islands. It's also the closest to the mainland at 11 miles. Part of the Channel Islands National Park. The entire front side of the island, or the mainland side of the island, is an MPA. It's actually 3 islands, three islands broken up by areas of impassable water. You can't go in between them. But if you cruise around the island, you can actually see between the islands. You got East Anacapa, Middle Anacapa, and West Anacapa. East Anacapa's got the lighthouse. You dive there in the landing cove and the quintessential arch rock. Biggest black sea bass I ever saw was over by Arch Rock in Landing Cove. It was probably 6 feet long, 600 pounds. It was good size. This is an actual dive site I got the privilege to name. A number of years ago, I was out on a charter boat and the guy pulls up, and this is an island where people have dove thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of times. But anyways, he pulls up to this cove and he said, nobody's ever named this site. Go down and tell me what name you want to give it, and I'll give you a prize. Okay, so I dropped down. There was lingcod all over the place. Came up, called it Lingcod Lair, and he says, you win. And I said, what kind of prize did I win? And he says, you get to name the cove. So it's Lingcod Lair. Goldfish Bowl is named for obvious reasons. Lots of goldfish. Garibaldi, California State marine fish. And what a lot of people don't know is there's actually 2 reefs there. A lot of certification classes go to Goldfish Bowl because it's a great little dive with lots of fish, little kelp forest there. But there's an outer Goldfish Bowl reef. And it's a little more current swept, a little bit deeper, 45, 60 feet. So that they won't take the certification classes out there. And because it's more current swept, they usually won't take the other divers out there. This is all also an area that's known as the Pelican Preserve. The Pelican Preserve, this is a little west of the Pelican Preserve. The Pelican Preserve runs about, remember I said this is the entire front side of the island as an MPA. It's very jealously guarded, by the way, and including East Anacapa has been an MPA for long before there were MPAs. Put it that way. It's been a preserve policed by the Channel Islands National Park. Anyways, I'm sorry, back to the Pelican Preserve. The Pelican Preserve starts from about right here and goes over to about right here. You can only get into it 2 months out of the year, October and November. What starts in October? Lobster season. Well, guess what? This is the only place in the front side of Anacapa where you can hunt lobster. So it's really good lobster hunting in the Pelican Preserve in those 2 months, October and November. Otherwise, you can't anchor in there. You can't even go in there. Nesting pelicans. Rat Rock is what I call its split personality. Front side is a lot of this. I think I got a picture of this. This purple gorgonian, which I really like. It's one of the few places where you see it on a regular basis. The purple gorgonian only meets it's a sea fan of about 18, 24 inches across, where most gorgonians in California waters, 2 or 3 feet across. The purple gorgonian is really pretty, the lacy kind of pattern to it. May want to mention coral pinnacle. On the backside of Anacapa on the west, of West Anacapa on the west end, is a reef called Coral Reef. Obviously, there's no coral there's no hydrocoral there, but because there's so many dramatic colors, they've called it Coral Reef. Well, off away from there is a place called Coral Pinnacle. Even more dramatic colors, more current swept, rarely dove because there's a lot of advanced diving involved in terms of the currents, the deep water. It drops off very steeply to beyond recreational diving limits. A lot of beautiful color there. Santa Cruz Island is the largest of the Channel Islands. It's the only island with permanent freshwater source. It's got a valley. It's got a vernal swamp actually inside the island, which I heard dried up during the drought, but it's almost always there. 2/3, I mentioned this before, 2/3 of the island is controlled by the Nature Conservancy. That's the western 2/3, and then the eastern 1/3 is available for people to land, hike, camp. It's the largest island. Can't quite see. Let me do something here. Okay. Flame Reef gets its name from its bright colors. Gull Island is part of an MPA. Kim and I encountered a pretty good sized torpedo ray there one time. She always jokes about how I like her getting in just the right juxtaposition where she can be behind the subject and the subject can be right in front of me, and we can get the relative size. Well, this was fairly early in her diving career, and I kept gesturing her to move in closer to this torpedo ray, moving closer. She didn't quite know what it was. She knew she'd never seen a torpedo ray before, but she knew there was one out there that would deliver a really whammy of an electrical shock, also known as the electric ray. She wasn't quite so sure, and I kept gesturing to move her in closer, move in closer. And as she moved in closer, I finally said, "That's close enough." Okay. And then we got to the surface, and she said, "Wasn't that a torpedo ray?" And I says, "Yes." She says, "Why were you telling me to get so close?" And I says, "Why are you getting so close?" There's a little bit of purple coral there at Gull Island. Not a lot, nowhere near as much as Farnsworth. Farnsworth off Catalina, but there's a lot of purple coral. Painted Cave, not a particular dive site, so to speak, but if you're on a charter boat, like I think this is the Peace, they'll actually go ahead and pull right into the cave, or maybe they'll take their inflatable skiff and go way back deep into the cave. It's supposed to be the world's largest sea cave. That's some ones in Italy say that no, that's not, but you can actually pull a full-size charter boat all the way into this cave. Santa Rosa Island, again, Channel Islands National Park, controlled by the Nature Conservancy, but also part of the Channel Islands National Park. It is the only island with regular air service, consumer air service to the island itself. I don't know how often they fly out there, and I know it's expensive, but a lot of times backpackers that don't want to go on a boat trip will go ahead and fly out to the island and then go backpacking into the island. I really enjoy East End Pinnacles. There's a series of pinnacles that are anywhere from 55, 60 feet down to as much as 100 feet down. They're not particularly high, but a lot just covered with these anemones, just beautiful white rose spotted anemones, rose anemones, fish-eating anemones, lots of color. Talcott Shoal is a very large area. Unfortunately, it's open and exposed to the northwest weather. But when you dive it, it's known for great lobster hunting. But don't just sell it short in terms of lobster hunting. It's got these ridges that are parallel ridges, one next to another, and the deeper ridges are full of color. Lots of nudibranchs, really nice. San Miguel Islands, the farthest west of all the Channel Islands. Being the farthest west, it's not quite as well protected from Point Conception. So you get a lot more of the weather that comes in and hits this island. So just like San Nicolas Island is a weather permitting destination, so is San Miguel Island. It's always weather permitting. The explorer, one of the original explorers of the Channel Islands, Juan Cabrillo, supposedly buried here with a jeweled sword. It is probably a fable. There's a monument there for him, but he was probably buried at Santa Rosa Island. They think so, but there's a monument there for him. Wyckoff Ledge is in this Tyler Bight here, and it comes up to about 30, 40 feet of water, then drops off vertically on one side, then steeply on the other side. Just covered in these white spotted rose anemones. Just beautiful. Inside Tyler Bight. Lots of nudibranchs in Tyler Bight, which you're going to find out in the northern Channel Islands. The further west you go, the colder water species you're going to find. It's going to look a little bit more like Central California than it is going to look like Catalina. You're not going to find the same species, including nudibranchs, at San Miguel Island. You're going to find at Catalina Island, for example. Red abalone, just about pretty much extinct up and down the coastline. They finally shut down the red abalone hunting on the north coast because of them being decimated by the kelp forest being decimated by warm water and urchin overruns, and the red abalone up there pretty much starved to death because there was no kelp for them to feed on. So what you've got is these red abalone that have found a sanctuary, so to speak. Of course, they're protected, but you drop down on certain reefs in Tyler Bight, and you're just going to find them layered, one on top of the other one. Big, huge ones like hubcaps. Just big, beautiful red abalone. It's beautiful to see. You got Wilson Rock out there. You've also got Richardson's Rock. If you're lucky enough, you can actually dive both in the same day. Rocks that come up come up and break the surface. Richardson's Rock is actually pretty good size. Further out, Richardson's Rock's interesting. It's got these gigantic holes in it. The shells that come away from the main pinnacle have these giant holes, like potholes. And you drop down inside this pothole and you get some great pictures. But it's curious how these things were formed. And it's theorized that pebbles dropped into small areas in the reef, and then in the surge rattled around, and dug out this hole. And then the pebbles eventually wore away. So you're going to find gravel at the bottom, and you're going to find this big hole above you. I thought that was really interesting. Out of Wilson's Rock, Richardson Rock, I can't remember which one's an MPA. Both of them aren't. Anyways, you see a lot of rock scallops. We're lucky enough to have a wonderful dive charter boat fleet all up and down our coastline, especially in Southern California. Pacific Star, I think that's the Bottom Scratcher, which I don't know if it's still operational. Ken, do you know if the Bottom Scratcher is still operational?
He is. He mainly runs Catalina, and a more limited load. But yes, they're still running out of 22nd Street Landing.
They are, okay. The one there in the middle is Sundiver Express, which is one of my favorite boats to Catalina. When I used to publish California Diving News, I wasn't allowed to tell you about my favorite boats. Now I can. I love the Vision. I'm going on the Vision Labor Day weekend to dive San Clemente Island, Santa Barbara Island. They're going to hit all the Southern Channel Islands, which is going to be a lot of fun. I'm going to really enjoy that. That Conception trip, that tragic Conception trip, I was supposed to be on that trip. Those Truth Aquatic boats are one of my favorite boats. I'm really sorry to hear what happened to them. It was heartbreaking. I'm going to miss the Conception a lot. But I'm going out on the Vision, so I'm still getting a good taste of that. The Horizon, one of my favorite boats out of San Diego. I need to update this PowerPoint. They just sold as a fishing boat, so they're no longer going to be in the dive charter boat fleet. Sad. It's too bad. Boats do run out of Avalon itself. This is a Scuba Cat. That's the Raptor out of Ventura, the Spectre out of Ventura, the Peace out of Ventura. And this is the cover of my new book, Diving Snorkeling Guide to the Channel Islands. 98 dive sites. And now, with Ken's permission, I'll entertain some questions.
Well, very cool. Well, first, what we have to do, let me go back to the gallery view. Dale, stop your share, if you will. So we go back to seeing everybody on screen. There we go. Now we give you the Zoom seekers. Quiet, thank you. I guess I gotta undo it. There I am. That, rather than everybody being unmuted. So we'll take questions, but I'll ask the first one. So, and someone may ask you about a beach dive, you know, like what's your favorite beach dive site? But I'm going to give you a more difficult question. What do you think the most overrated dive is in Southern California?
Oh gosh. Most overrated dive site in Southern California, beach dive?
Beach or wherever, doesn't matter.
I would say it's a must-do dive site. You must do it, but I think it's overrated. Does that make sense?
Sure.
Because it's just mobbed. It's mobbed by divers, including new classes. Okay, and that's Shaw's Cove.
Okay.
Yeah. I'd say close second to that is probably La Jolla Canyon. Wonderful dive site, a lot of variety to it. It's a must-do kind of dive site, but I'm a little tired of it.
Yeah, I feel the same way about the Blue Hole in Belize. Everybody, oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Worst dive I've ever. What a waste of time. Anyhow,
And they're
not in Southern California. All right. Who else has questions?
Nitrogen.
You can either use the little raise hand thing or actually raise your hand or however you want to do it. So who's got a question for Dale? Oh, come on. Someone does. Glenn, I'll put you on the spot. There we go. Oh, Jeff's, I don't have my things. Jeff is raising his hand. Jeff, unmute yourself and have at it. Jeff's trying to find his unmute button right now. There we go.
Dead Man's Reef, Dale. You going out there much?
No, North Crescent Cove.
Yes.
Yeah, I really love it. It's the best, most consistent visibility at Laguna Beach. You're going to regularly expect at worst 20 foot of visibility. At best, you get 60 foot of visibility, but it's a really long swim. You got
Yes, it is.
300-yard swim.
Yeah.
250, 300-yard swim. But it's worthwhile. It's worthwhile.
A lot of people can't find it sometimes.
Yeah, it's surprising how big the reef is.
I know.
Most people head too far south.
Yeah. By the rock, Bird Rock.
Yes.
Yeah, it's Bird Rock. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very good.
I do a lot of Shaw's Cove. I didn't know I do that quite a bit down there. And there was a lot of people. They had a lot of classes down there 2 weeks ago.
A lot of people. It's like I said, it's one of those must-dos. It gets a little
Yeah.
crazy without the parking and the crazy people. And it gets a little crazy.
Well, I'm a little early bird. I get down there, but when the sun's coming up, so I get my
Good
2
idea.
dives and I'm done.
Good idea.
Jay Wilson, you were frantically waving your hand.
Dale, do you have any comments about any of the sites off of Redondo, like the Redondo Reef or anything like that?
Yeah.
They're available by boat, but I frankly haven't dove it. I'd like to know your thoughts.
Well, I've dove one of the artificial reefs. I've never dove the Palawan. The Palawan is the Liberty ship that was sunk into the canyon, 120, 130 feet of water. Yeah, it's reachable by boat. It's not exactly Redondo, but I love Flat Rock Point. Okay, it used to be one of those places I was crazy enough to beach dive from. Not anymore. But it's a good dive. So it's on the south side of Torrance Beach into Rancho Palos Verdes.
The walk down's not so bad.
Oh,
The walk back up that's going to kill you.
and the walk down since the rains. We've been over there since the rains. It's
Nope.
horrible. It's horrible condition.
No, thank you.
Yeah.
No, thank you. I'll throw in though in that area Malaga Cove, which
Oh,
I used to use as a training site. The neat thing about Malaga Cove is it's where the shoreline changes from sand to rock
Exactly.
right in the corner there. So
Right.
from a training standpoint, you can train sandy beach entries, rocky beach entries, but the reef itself is just a really, I think, on a nice day, really good shallow dive and very extensive reef, and you name it, you probably can see it there, maybe with the exception of giant sea bass. So
No, I've actually seen the giant sea bass.
I've
there.
never seen, I've never seen them there.
Yeah, wasn't a particularly large one. I've seen barracuda there. I've seen white sea bass there. I've seen angel sharks there. It's a good dive. You said something important though. You said say when it's on a nice day. I have an adage about Malaga Cove. When it's good, it's great. When it's poor, it's really bad. It's
Yeah.
just one of those sites that you just-
Not a horrible walk either, I must say.
What's
No,
that?
it's not.
Not a horrible walk down.
No, it's a steep path but short, and it's a paved path.
And in the good old days, I had a key to the gate there, and we would drive down, dump the gear, drive
really?
back up. Makes it a lot better. Mark Garrity, you've got your hand up officially.
Yeah, well, since we're talking about beach dives, what about the Panga State Park? I've actually snorkeled that and thought it's pretty cool, not bad.
Topanga? State
Yeah.
Park? Never
Yeah.
dove. Never dove there.
But Mark, aren't there a lot of surfers there too? Is
Yeah,
that
the
one
surfers
right at the
yeah,
intersection of
well, the
Topanga.
surfers are to the west, but if you go to
Okay.
the southern part of the beach, you walk down to the left a little bit. Very easy entry. I haven't scubaed it, but I've snorkeled it, and it's a lot of stuff, a lot of fish and things. I was just curious. I thought that it might.
You weren't, are you talking about, what am I doing? Las Tunas?
Tunis.
Las Tunas?
No,
No.
I think it's
No, Las
south-
Tunas is
Las
much further
Tunas.
down.
Yeah, it's right. You know where Topanga Boulevard runs into the PCH, right at that intersection to the little bit to the northwest, 100 yards. There's a parking lot, and it's a surfer beach primarily, but it seems like it would be a pretty nice place to dive.
I'll check it out. A lot of times I learn more from the people that I talk to than they learn from me. So Topanga, okay, I remember that.
Yeah,
I can recommend a great beach diving book, Dale, if you ever want to see it. It's written by a fellow named Sheckler.
I was just going to
I've gotten-
say, wait a minute.
I've had 3 copies of that book at least over the years.
You know, I have a copy of that upstairs. I'm going to go check, see if Topanga's in there.
My guess is probably not. But there are, and as Dale said, it's a separate talk. When you go there, you've got, Las Tunas, which we mentioned there. You've
Right.
got, what the hell's what's the rock that's near Malibu Divers?
Big Rock.
Big Rock. Thank
Big
you.
Rock, yeah,
Big
Yeah,
Rock. I used to
Las
dive
Tunas-
Corral Canyon a lot.
the book.
Yeah,
Yeah, Corral Canyon's nice.
Las Tunas is, I was just gonna say, Las Tunas is much harder to entry. It's down a steep set of rocks and it's a lot of surf.
But Mark, as we get older, we appreciate this. It's got porta potties.
Well,
Very
hell,
important.
no, hey, Topanga's got a full service bathroom.
Well, there
Even
you
with
go.
shower, it even has
But you got-
showers.
you got to share it with surfers.
Yeah.
What else we got question wise? There we go. John's got his hand up.
Yeah.
Hey
Hi.
guys.
Hi, Dale. John Nichols from the
Oh,
Illinois
that's John.
Desert
John
Island.
Lum, I'll get to you next. John Nichols,
Okay.
you're up.
Hi Dale.
All right.
Oh,
So one of my
John
favorite
Nichols, what,
spots
John
is
Lum? John Nichols
yes.
first. John Lum second.
Okay.
well, I'm leaving then.
Oh, there you go.
Hi, Dale.
John Nichols, you're up.
From the Antelope Valley Desert Divers. Used to come up and be our guest speaker all the time.
Oh, okay, yeah.
What about the off of Zuma there, out the pinnacle out there? You do much diving out there?
I've dove it probably half a dozen times. I never liked the current. It's a really great dive. And it's funny, currents are a funny thing. They make for really great dives in terms of marine life. And this goes with it where the Channel Islands or whether along the beach. You don't get a lot of currents in most beach dives. But off the pinnacles, off point, up the point there,
Yeah.
really great dive. But you have to swim down current
That's right.
to get to them, and then up current to get back. So that makes it challenging.
Nice hearing from you.
John Lum, you're up. And I can tell you, I have dove the pinnacle in John Lum's boat.
Uh-huh.
So
That's correct.
it's much easier in a boat.
So I was going to talk about my favorite dive at Catalina is actually the West End, both very shallow and very deep. In the shallows, there's lots and lots of little caves, loads of lobsters. And when you go deep, when I've been there, it's been super clear and you can see forever. There's a great rock pile and a landslide type of thing there, caves and all kinds of cool stuff, but you rarely can get there. Anybody else been?
Is it on the back side of Catalina or on the front side?
It's right on the tip, really.
On
So
the
I guess,
tip. Okay.
yeah.
You're
they
talking
call
Land's
it-
End, John? All the way at
Land's
the
End or
all the way at the
Disneyland.
end?
Yeah.
Yeah, Land's End.
Never
So-
been.
Really?
Ah,
Charter boat out there. No.
It is great. It's got a real nice sheer drop off, and then there's a bunch of ledges going out at the actual Land's End. And then you go around that corner and there's that huge cove there, which is also great.
Mhm. I've dove what they call Eagle Rock.
Yeah.
It's like a big finger sticking up. Yeah.
That's just around the backside
Right.
as well. And there's another cove back there that Arnold Lancaster used to like to dive. I think he called it Farmer's Rock, which is
Mhm.
yet another rock, inside the cove there. I mean, here's the interesting thing for everybody that, with not to brag about how old we all are, but between Dale and John and I, we've got, I don't know, 120, 150 years of diving here. There's a lot of spots, and especially because the charter boats don't go out as much now as they used to, and there aren't as many charter boats, and they don't go to the outer islands as much as they used to. There's a lot of spots that people are just going to forget about. And I remember one time, for those of you who know of or knew Roger Hess, who was the founder of Charisma Charters and sort of also the godfather of Chamber Day. And I was on a 3-day trip where we were at San Clemente Island, and the wind was blowing straight out of the northwest, which means it blows straight down the front side and straight down the back side. And the only place you could dive was Pyramid Cove, which is really a pretty wide spot. But we dove all these spots, and Roger would say, "Oh yeah, we don't dive this anymore. For 3 days, we never repeated a spot inside of Pyramid Cove. So there's all these places that are going to get lost to just memories fading. People who know where they are don't dive them anymore, or whatever case by being. You mentioned, Dale, Ken's Cave, where I haven't been there. I haven't been to Santa Barbara in probably, 10 years. But it's one of those things, if you don't know it's there, you won't necessarily find it. So there's an awful lot of spots when you consider how much mileage there is with all the circumferences of all the islands. There's just probably tons of spots that either don't know about or just forgot about.
Mm-hmm. That's one of the reasons I endeavored to do this book, because I had all these GPS readings and all that, and had all these dive sites, and I just really wanted to get them down, recorded somewhere. And one of my first customers in terms of buying the book, I first introduced it at the scuba show last year, was the new operators of the Vision. That was funny. I mean, then nothing to take away from them. I mean, they're great people and stuff, the new operators. But they want to be informed. I like to think they inherited the logbook from the previous owners. So who knows?
All I can tell you, one time we were out on what was then the Risky Business, and then became Jerry Shapiro's boats. Now the what is it called now? It's Arnold's boat. We jokingly call it the SS Never Sail because it's been tied up at the dock for 15 years now. But we went out. Don Bannis was running the boat, and we were going to San Clemente. It's a 16 passenger boat and fast as hell. And I said, I want to go to window pane. And he went, okay, great. And I went to sleep and wake up in the morning, and one of my dive masters comes down and wakes me up. He goes, Ken, you need to go up to the wheelhouse. They don't know where window pane is. And they're going like, well, so, that's the kind of thing that it's knowledge a lot of times that, I hope your book can memorialize some of the stuff, Dale, because people, there's a lot of dive sites, like I said, and people will forget about them.
There are, I only have 98 dive sites in the new book. There are thousands out there, great dives. Like was mentioned previously, on the West End, there were some dive sites that, do you remember Pam Driver?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. She put me on one. She says, now you're not to take GPSs on this. Not that we even had GPSs back then. You're not to take any coordinates. You're not to tell anybody. But of course, I was writing articles and stuff at the time about this dive site. And it's probably the most fantastic Catalina dive I'd ever done. All I can tell you was on the West End, and it was near Johnson's Rock, but it was this pinnacle that came up out of nowhere.
Now known as Arnold's Reef. He used to love to dive it as well. It sits, I don't know, half a mile offshore between Johnson's Rock and the West End. But again, it's one of those things. And sometimes these things is why the guys leave their, it used to be, the depth sounders running. And they go, what the hell was that? There was we found a spot at Santa Barbara Island between the Arch and Sutil Island with Tim Burke on, at that time, The Great Escape. And we ran over it one time, and he said, we'll have to come back and try it. So our next trip out, we did, and we dove it. And, he said, well, what do you want to call it? And I said, well, if it's good, I'm going to name it after myself. And if it's no good, we're calling it Tim's Folly. So, but yeah, that, how many dive sites are there? Because it's also the type of thing, like we go to San Clemente, everybody wants to go to Fishhook. So what everybody would say, let's go to Fishhook, go to Fishhook. There's got to be 50 sites around San Clemente Island. You're only going to dive 3 of them in a day. Don't go to the same ones all the time.
Yeah.
So
I've only been to the backside of San Clemente Island probably a dozen times. Always great diving, always great lobster hunting. But it's a hitter. There's one place called the 7.5 reef, 7.5 fathom reef. Just an incredible dive. But you can't get there that often.
Right. Well, it's like on the backside there. Also, there's Swiss cheese, which is about a third of the way up the backside. It's a huge rock, and it's got, I'm not sure the number, 4 or 5 channels that run through it like a piece of Swiss cheese. and it's just interesting to dive around it. And then right next to that is a I don't remember what we called it, but it's a nice reef with a lot of purple coral on the outside of the reef. So again, you stop diving these areas and people forget about them.
Mhm.
Like you didn't even mention Cortez Bank.
Not Channel Islands. And I just let that go.
I don't know if it is or not.
Uh,
We can debate that further another time.
how about Osborne Bank or Tanner Bank?
Yeah.
Do you have any thoughts about Little Harbor over on the backside? There's a little reef there. I never heard anybody diving it much. I've anchored there, but any diving there around Little Harbor?
I've dove the Little Harbor on the west side, the southwest side. I've dove that reef there. Don't know what it's called, but right there, I know there's a name to the point. This was so long ago. Yeah, all I remember is there was a lot of abalone.
There's a reef that just kind of protects it and stuff, and then there's that camp in there. It makes a nice little anchorage. But I never knew of anybody to go do much diving there.
I'll give you a funny little harbor story. I was on a boat, probably a lot of you never heard of, the Scuba Queen, with Jay. I can't remember his name, but he's one-arm captain. And we're diving the backside.
Mickey
and
Pittman.
Who is it?
I think it was Mickey Pittman.
No, Jay something or other.
Okay.
Mickey had both his arms, and Mickey
Okay.
was Wild Wave.
Yes. Okay. You're right.
This was Scuba Queen. But he start talking about, we dove Farnsworth, and we dove somewhere else, and he says, "Oh, I got this great dive. I think it was called either the Lingpo or the Ningpo." I said, "Well, what is it?" Oh, he tells this great story about how it's this ship that was smuggling in Chinese immigrants, illegal immigrants, and it like ran aground inside Little Harbor, and it's a really cool place. Oh, okay, fine. So I go in there. It's basically ribs of a boat in about 10 feet of water with about 5 foot of visibility. So there are some dive sites that deserve to be forgotten.
Mhm.
Any other questions for Mr.
Yeah, I
Sheck?
got one.
Oh, okay, Jeff, how about it?
Speaking of wrecks, besides over at Avalon area, are there any wreck diving that's in recreational limits? I always hear about tech divers, but how about anything up in the recreational area?
Well, there's a Sujet, what you mentioned, Catalina. What's the name of that wreck? There's one on the backside of Middle Anacapa, and I, for the life of me, can't remember what it's called now. But it's not much to it. It's about 35, 40 feet of water.
There's a small freighter off of the east side of Santa Cruz. I dove at one time at like Spirit of America or something like.
Oh, yeah.
that.
That's
Yeah.
what it was.
There's a midnight hour, on the backside, of Catalina as well.
That's by,
Haven't dove
and
that
that's
one
right
yet.
around the corner from Land's End, I think.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Fairly recent wreck. Yeah.
Yeah, fairly.
Yeah, there's also the Olympic. The Olympic's about 3 miles outside of the breakwater. That's in 60 to 100 feet of water. There's the Ace One, which is over between the breakwater and the oil rigs. That's in about 110, 120 feet of water, I want to say.
I dove the what's called the Falcon.
hmm
You ever dived that before? Had a really great dive there, about 90 feet of water. We had 60 foot of viz. Really unusual.
Yeah, there are a bunch of small ones like by the Palos Verdes.
Yeah. And again, it'll be more on the tech side, but I'll just remind everybody, our January speaker was Brett Eldridge. And if you go on the YouTube page, he was talking about the undiscovered wrecks of Southern California. And some of them that you mentioned are little too deep for my taste. But anyhow, there's a lot of them there, and that's one of his passions now is finding some of those wrecks.
His wrecks are more on 250 range. Yeah.
Yeah,
I listened to his talk. It was really interesting.
Yeah. Cool. And as a side note, and I just found out this today, they just announced the winners of the Underwater Photographer of the Year competition, British version, and one of his assembled photogrammetric pictures of one of the wrecks actually was the prize winner in the wreck category.
Oh,
So in when you guys get TWARS Sunday night this week at Reef Seekers for the uneducated, I will have a link to all those picture winners, including Brett's will be in there. So you can look to that. Anything else for Mr. Sheckler as we're winding on down?
looking at one of the chat questions, wasn't Lover's
Oh, yeah.
snorkel only? Yes, it's snorkel only.
Yes. And
Not-
by the
not-
way, on the
no
Horizon
scuba.
thing, Jay, one of the big reasons
Very
Horizon
sad. That was a great boat.
Oh, yeah.
one of the reasons that
Great
Horizon gave for going out of business was pandemic related, but also with the closure now of Guadalupe Island, which was a lot of their business. And they said that's just sort of the final nail in their coffin. I
For
see
those
also
wondering,
that-
the Great,
Yeah, go
Great
ahead, Jay.
Escape. Great Escape was also on that dock, or is also on the dock that Horizon was on. Great Escape
Yeah.
was retired and became a fishing boat. And
Yeah, years ago.
It's not on that boat. Yeah.
years ago. And Andrea mentioned the Winfield Scott. FYI, that is a protected wreck. And if you go on the Winfield Scott, which is at Anacapa, and you decide to take a souvenir, because you'll find like spikes and shit like that, there have been people who've been arrested for vandalizing the wreck. And because it's in a national park, it's like a big time felony. So
Yeah.
just a word to the wise about that.
1849 gold era steamer had gold
Yeah.
on board. Supposedly all the gold was salvaged, but as recent as the 1960s, people have been finding gold still on it. But no souvenirs, don't touch.
Right. And as a final note, there's always the wreck of the Valiant. It is outside the underwater park. I would never advise you to illegally drop down at the north corner of the park and kick over and then kick back, make sure you end up in the park. I would never advise you to do that. But the Valiant was the largest pleasure yacht of its time. And the rumor is there was $10,000 worth of diamonds on it, which is yet to be found. So I'm just saying, something to do on a weekend when you're in. It's how you pay for your Catalina trip.
$35,000 in diamonds. Did you know that?
Well,
Not 10.
obviously not, or I would have said that.
Inflation.
There you go. Probably worth a little bit more now. All right. Well, again, Dale, thank you very much for a good and lively talk. Next month, we will be on March 14th. Our speaker is Dan Orr. Now, he normally talks on a safety subject. I'm not sure exactly what he's going to talk about, but I do know he literally just came back last week from a trip to Antarctica. So I'm not sure if he'll be talking Antarctica or dive safety, or maybe combine the two and talk dive safely in Antarctica or something like that. But that'll be our speaker for March. So Dale, thank you very much. Go out and buy Dale's book. How can you buy your book, Dale? Get in your quick
Amazon.
commercial.
Amazon.
Okay.
Yeah.
Amazon.com, find Dale's book. And thank you all for spending time with us tonight. We will hope to see you in March. And as for now, I'm Ken Curtis with Reef Seekers, thanking you for joining us on Zoom Seekers. And I'm going to hit the magic button that says goodbye.